nerds. This is Scene and Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine. It is currently, hold on, wait for it, -27 outside. Pretty sure it was -30 at some point today.
Yeah, well, it's a little chilly here, but we're here to talk about the best of 2025 and what we're looking forward to 2026.
So, in case you are new here, this is the annual list. And there's going to be more than one list happening for 2025. I can guarantee you that from at least me. But we will start with the traditional top 5 TV shows. Now, these do not have to be TV shows that we have covered this year. They can be anything, but the rule is the show has to have premiered in 2025. Granted, Stranger Things will be an option for 2026. Okay. Just saying 2026 because their season is not over yet and it is a pretty good start. But, and it's favorite, best, however you want to interpret that. There are no parameters as long as the show premiered this year and the episodes aired this year, they will be accepted as a part of our list. And so on that note, we will do honorable mentions, but after, no spoilers.
Nope.
Oh, speaking about spoilers, can I do this asterisk? And Will, you can deny this, but I say, I'm sorry guys, but we're talking about some of our favorite shows we've seen this year. So spoilers for anything.
Yeah.
Anything and everything.
Spoiler alert is on. So you have been warned. You know, if you hear something that you haven't watched while we're giving our back and forth on the list, feel free to move forward. Try to do my best to put some timestamps in so we can you don't get spoiled. But I got a few assets too for our video watchers. If you listen to us on audio, just do your best. We will try not to spoil. Well, to let you know when we do the transitions between each of our picks. But spoilers ahead. And also, this is our list, and we want please let us know what your thoughts on what we put together, and also some of your favorites from the year.
What we missed. Because I pay attention to other people's lists, whether it's movies, TV shows, or even music, and I always manage to find something I missed. And then I think to myself at the end of the following year, oh, if only I could go behind. All right. Well, that brings us to my list, and I'm going to start us off. I don't know if Will has drafted I think this is what Sarah's going to do, but this was a last minute decision, and it came down to just me being true to my heart. And I don't think it would be appropriate for my list not to have Nobody Wants This Season 2 on it. Arguably, and I don't know with some other shows out there, but I've definitely rewatched this show multiple times. I think when it came out, the second season came out in October, and by the time we between it coming out and us talking, I think I said I managed to finish it, but I lapped it, and then I went back, watched season 1, led into season 2, and I feel like I went at least 3 times. There is something, point one, why I adore this show. Chemistry, the cast. I'm not just talking Adam Brody and Kristen Bell. The cast all around, excellent chemistry. It just works. There's an episode in this season where, for a fair part of it, the 6 couples of this season are just playing a game of kind of like a secret sharing game. And it was just so fascinating. It was like, can we just be here? And my point number 2, the honesty of the writing. These are real relationships from a lot of different perspectives, whether it's a new relationship, whether you've been married for 16 years and you're suddenly like, who am I? Who am I, like, a part of this relationship, outside of this relationship? You start to go through that. There there's people who are still trying to find their person. And so I feel as though there's a lot of identity that people can find in these characters and identify with. And between that, the comedy, and I think my third point and my final point about the show and why I am just obsessed with it is nostalgia. And I say nostalgia because I grew up in the time of this little indie show called Friends. I grew up with Will and Grace. I grew up with Home Improvement. I grew up like there's something about those half-hour sitcoms that the further we got out of the 2000s, the further they started to dissipate and just not be like the 90s, the late 80s through the 90s was like the gold standard of the sitcom, and then it kind of dissipated. And this show isn't necessarily a sitcom, but I feel as though because it's a half hour, it is a comedy, and it is just about life in general. I feel it like it's a very modern sitcom and the closest thing that I've seen that just is like allows like a subtle comfort to also watching it. So that's why I adore this show. Say what you will about how it ends in season 2. I have rewatched it multiple times and I have accepted the ending and I think it was the right choice. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I know you've talked about this one quite a bit. I know it's one of your comfort shows or favorites. Yeah, so does not surprise me that it is on your list. So I guess it's my turn for my number 5.
Mhm.
All right. So for me, my show, and again, we have not. Both of us are going to go into this completely cold, not knowing what the other person is going to click. But Sarah probably will not be surprised when I say The Studio was my 5th ranked show for 2025. And this is one of those ones where honestly, I know we were, it was in late spring and we were sort of in between things, but we both had heard a lot of conversation about this show, and it's on Apple TV, and we decided to give it a go. And I have to say, for me, I think one of the reasons why this show really spoke to me as far as just one of my top ones for the year was I love satire. I really enjoy a good satire, and this one was just a sharp satire of Hollywood ego, power. I mean, Matt Remick, as far as Seth Rogen's character, the insecurity that felt really real and grounded, and so I think it was that. Plus, it was just a really good ensemble show where and I know we don't do as much news as we used to do here on the podcast as far as like what's premiering and a lot, and those types of things. But but we both enjoy like listening to a lot of podcasts, whether it's on the Ringer or other industry themed shows and the sort of scuttlebutt. So so for me, this like it was like cool to have a show that not only had you know the nice ensemble that sort of had a nice balance between the comedy and the industry intrigue. Also, it did pull the curtain back a little bit in some respects of like how creative decisions are made. And I know when we were having discussions about the show, we could like see things that we've talked about over the years as far as projects being developed or casting, maybe one person get picked versus another person, and then just all the is it it's fiction stranger than truth or truth stranger than fiction type of elements that this show I think really captured some of the things. And and again, given our nature of the things that we talk about here, for me it was just very rewarding almost to see things that as I was just saying, some of the jokes really didn't land for me because it's like, oh yeah, I remember like this happening in, with XYZ project or something like that. And then also, it was just a very funny show. I mean, I think about like when Paul Dano was like playing that one character with the they were filming like a adventure kind of throwback to some of the '80s action adventure films, and how that and the whole sequence there as far as like with the Matt Remnick, Seth Rogen's character, and the direct producer of that film that they were making really was just very funny, and also just and of course Bryan Cranston and his this always just on point with his comedic chops, and also just really Matt's just insecurity, as I mentioned before, and just feelings of just wanting to belong, and I think about the whole Golden Globes night with where it just became just a big joke about how what the Matt's partner in the studio became like a running line as far as every night they kept thanking everyone, they kept thanking the guy, and then Ian Buckles' character, but Matt was just sort of sitting there, and he just wanted to be loved, and he just, and that was going to be his big moment, but it still just kind of failed. So just really enjoyed the show. It was just one, it's one of those things where if something sticks with you. This is one of those shows that stuck with me throughout the year as I was putting together my list, and so that's why it's my fifth rank show. I know you were. I was definitely more on it than you were, but
I do still stand by casting is the best episode of that season. And yes, I say that over the pilot, which won Emmys, but I still think casting should have won those Emmys. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying that was like the peak of that show for me.
Yeah.
All right, that leads us into, it'll be interesting how much overlap happens.
Yeah.
And I say that because my next show you have not seen. And we know this because I've brought it up a few times, and every time you're like, I still haven't watched it. It's The Pit season 1.
Yeah.
It's I could not have this on my list because I was thinking about it, and I do know I've been critical about The Pit season 1. I don't think it deserves necessarily all of the accolades that it's received, but I do remember watching it. I have thought about it since watching it. And I also am really looking forward to season 2 because they do set up 2 characters. Neither one are played by Noah Wyle. I'm just going to note that I am really interested to see how their story continues. And it again, the nostalgia. I grew up with the ER was so a part of my life for a period of time because of when I would get out of school, or I felt like it was always on TNT. It was just always on TNT. And there were some like once I got caught up on it, I remember being in middle school and watching the newer episodes as they aired on Thursday nights. And it's just so, and The Pit is not ER. The Pit is not Grey's Anatomy, but it is also very much call back. Like I like how between my previous show and this show, they're both modernizing something that was such a comfort and such an interesting aspect, like a workplace drama. I'm not talking about workplace comedy. We've had plenty of those over the years. But a true workplace drama that doesn't go too far into the melodrama. And it's not a soap opera. It's like as authentic as it can be of this is what a full shift in the ER would be like on arguably, and because it's television, one of the worst days that it could happen, considering what ends up unfolding in that shift. But I do think it is something that people should watch and check out. And I will do a disclaimer about it. There is an episode, and I say this to prepare y'all for it, because if you're not prepared, you will get a jump scare. And it is arguably the worst jump scare you will ever get because you're literally going to see someone push a baby out of their vagina. They do cut to it, okay? So don't look. If you see a woman come in and she's pregnant, just play it in the background and do not look at the screen. Okay?
You've been warned. You've been warned.
You've been warned.
If you can't handle it, then
yeah, because this isn't a it's arguably we've covered ironically a lot of bursts over the
yeah,
year.
we have.
They you so none quite like that, but yeah, number 4 is The Pit. It was hard for me because I was like, should this go over? Nobody wants this season 2. And because they're hour-long episodes and they really are well written and well directed, that's something I don't know if it's a lot of people talk about, but because it's a workplace drama and you're in the ER and you're constantly moving in and out of rooms and spaces, the camera work is amazing and it's very well directed television show. I had to put it above the heartwarming romantic comedy show. So yeah, that's my number 4 pick.
All right. Well, so we're not going to definitely not have, at least for these first 2 picks, no overlap. But my number 4 show is one that I just recently did a rewatch of, and I think it definitely solidified this spot for me, and that's Paradise. I really, really, really enjoyed the show. It was definitely one that it started off the year with a bang. It's definitely it's kind of a slow burn mystery box type of show that really trusted, at least for me as an audience member, it kept me engaged in a way that it trusted me as a viewer to stay engaged without over explaining things. I mean, it was pretty straightforward as far as, using the, the nonlinear storytelling elements to its advantage. And, I did watch a little bit of This Is Us, Dan Fogelman, who is the executive producer behind Paradise, also was the showrunner for that. But it definitely worked. Strong performances across the board. I mean, you could definitely see that being reflected now in an award season with nominations for most of the cast, from Sterling K. Brown to Juliana Nicholson to James Marsden as well. And, but also the strong performances to me help ground the high concept premise, which basically a cataclysmic event had happened on the planet, and all these folks end up in a bunker that was constructed for the top percenters. And then of course the president gets murdered, and then it becomes a murder mystery to try to figure out what's going on in this science fiction construct, which I really thought it was really done well. There's definitely some world building that took place as the season progressed, and things, learning about the backgrounds of these characters and their motivations and how they got to where they are. And then one thing too that, is a show that just lingered. I mean, there was the one episode that's built up to the day of when everything ended. Definitely is one of those moments that stands out for me as far as just shows that stands out as moments for an episode of television in 2025 is, to this day. And even when I rewatched it with my wife, it was hard. I knew it was coming, but just to see her reaction to it when everything went down, and for me, it was on the rewatch where I was like, yeah, this is still just as impactful on a rewatch as it was the first time I viewed it. Definitely is why it definitely is in my top 5 shows for this year. So yeah, Paradise is on 4th on my list, and season 2 is going to be coming out here shortly.
Yeah, I'm going to save my thoughts on Paradise for later in the show. And I predict there will be one crossover.
I do too.
Yeah. I think our listeners, if you've been following us, this past year, you know what show it'll be.
Yeah, yeah.
It'll be interesting if it's in the same spot on both of our lists. That's the clincher. I don't know about that. Well, there might be two. Now that I think of it, there might be two.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us into a non-overlap. This is also my prediction. I don't think this is on your list. It is on my list. Very predictable, very standard. Bear season 4. Now, this might shock people because I have not talked about The Bear season 4 since we covered it in July. But we all know how I feel about The Bear, specifically season 2.
Yeah.
And I was very enthusiastic about The Bear season 4 when it first came out. I laughed it. And specifically, you got the Worms episode, you have and then specifically the season finale. Like, there are so many episodes that every time I'm like, oh, I think that was the best one. Then I think about Worms, or then I think about the wedding episode. And this season, I think there's still the rain cloud that was season 3 holding over it.
Yeah.
And so and also season 2 set such a freaking high bar that it's so hard to get back there, that I totally understand the continued criticism of it, but I do think it was a return to form. I do think that in hindsight, it will stand out as a better season than it currently does, just because I really, and I think I said this when we initially were talking about our thoughts about season 4, is that it's a return to form because I feel like it matches what I took away from season 1. And season 1, I was not that high on. I watched it. I liked it. I didn't understand everyone's high praise. Now, season 2 got me. Season 2 got me so hard. I feel like I watched nothing but see The Bear for like a month straight. Just constant. I don't know how many times I have rewatched The Bear season 2. Then going into season 3, oh, it was just hard to watch because you're just like, we're just standing still. There was no movement and no progression, and that's really what you watch TV for. You watch character development, you watch stories unfolding, and it felt so stagnant that initially I feel like the first couple of episodes felt that way with season 4, but then things started moving. Characters made decisions, and finally in that season finale, like the 3 central characters all said what we have been waiting for them to say out loud, and it was beautiful. I love me just a one-shot episode, and I'm so still on board with this show, and I really hope that we get like the next season will match season 2 energy. And we can maybe 1 or 2 seasons, I don't really know, but we can start to wrap this up before we kill it, because I don't want this show to die.
Yeah.
But so that is why it's on my list, and then you would think, well, that's a pretty high placement for a show that I technically have not talked about that much this year. And it's a high placement because I know that if we weren't onslaughted with a bunch of TV during the second half of this year, I probably would have been rewatching The Bear. If reality TV shows didn't come a swinging during the second half of the year for me, I probably would have done countless rewatches. Life just got in the way, but I do, the more I think about the show and what I felt about it while watching it, the more there are several episodes in that season that are just some of the best television I've seen this year. So that is my pick for number 3.
Nice. Well, I will say we will not overlap with The Bear. It definitely it we'll get to honorable mentions, but it definitely I'll hold my comments on Bear season 4 until then. But the show that probably will be an overlap is, for me, my third of Severance. And so I came to Severance late. I did not watch it when it first premiered on Apple TV back in, I want to say 2022, 2023. But, and of course we did not cover it real time when it aired earlier this year, but it definitely it exceeded my expectations. I did a rewatch of season one before watching season two, and this show is just an office setting, and you would think that it would be not very visually striking, but that starkness and the sets that they have, works towards the advantage to its advantage, and and really the things that this season really did for me was it just deepened the exploration of identity and workplace dynamics and corporate greed and corporate how workers are just cogs in the corporate machine, and how it, especially towards the back end, as we were learning more about what Mark was working on as he was trying to get reintegrated, and we learned the story about Gemma, and how we learned that she's actually is we had the she's alive moment, but then they waited to really follow up on all of that, not until the seventh episode. But how the second season started with it was just solely on the innies, and then the next episode was focused on the outies, and it just narrative, it really took a lot of swings, but it did it in a way that didn't play safe. And even in hindsight now, I know I was very critical of the episode of with Michelle, but it was still, now that and I was at the time, I was like, well, they could have sprinkled Harmony story throughout other episodes, but now that but seeing it as an entirety, it did work as a complete whole cohesive unit. And so I think between that, just the performances, across the board with the cast was just, phenomenal. It definitely elevated the surreal material, and whenever they went to the forest to have their excursion was, and we see the moment there, of course, the whole issues with Helly and Helena, and learning how Helena had masqueraded as Helly, and it's just learn more about what was going on. I mean, it was just it was such proof of concept again that that prestige sci-fi television can be both unsettling and also emotionally resonant. So for me, Severance season two was my it was just a phenomenal block of a season of television, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Oh, it's too low on your list because it's number 2 on mine. Severance season 2 is number 2 on my list. So everybody fast forward through Will, because Severance should be the top of the top. I know what you put above it, and that's why I'm mad. I know what you did. I know the game you're about to play, and it bothers me. And you do this because you know it will piss me off. To each their own. Severance season 2 is my number 2 choice because of the episode Bardot. And if I mispronounce that, well, screw y'all, because that's how I pronounce it. This episode of television is, first of all, my favorite episode of this entire series. Second of all, it is also arguably my favorite episode of television this year. And it's so weird because arguably you think that that's the best episode of the season, and then you're reminded of the finale is so good. And you're reminded of the first episode, or you're reminded of any scene that Milchek is in. Milchek is my MVP of this season.
Yeah.
But just all of our thoughts about the finale, if you go back and listen to our discussion about the finale of this season, you will get why we're just both enamored with this show. And for me, as y'all know, I'm a diehard shipper. And this season in particular, this is I think this season is so much better than the first season. Because the first season, it was such an introduction to this high concept show and premise that I felt like I was like, okay, cool, we're doing some weird shit here. But this season two, it drilled down into the characters and their relationships with each other, and it brought in the most pentagon of pentagon love triangles ever. It totally played with your mind to where you're watching the season finale and my heart, I'm still team Gemma. Even though I do like the chemistry between Helly R and Mark S. I just to have to understand Gemma's plight this season, that's what got me because I'm like, oh, ooh, now I I understand why Mark S loves Helly, and now more importantly, I understand why Mark loves Gemma. Like it's it's so well done that I think about I'll think about and praise season 2 way more than I have ever thought about season 1. And that's probably why still put it at my as my second choice this year. But it I just we said so much while covering this season that if y'all really want to understand, just go back and relive it with us.
Yeah.
Because I knew it would be good, but I as it went on, I was just the more and more we talked about it, the more I was like, there's so much more. And I will say, if I will probably rewatch this season. And when I do, I will gladly skip sweet vitriol. I don't care what Easter eggs. I ain't sitting through that again. I don't need to. I ain't going to because that episode alone is it why it's ranked number 2, okay? I don't care. If it's a bad episode, I watch you one time and then I skip you. It's just like when I'm watching a TV show I like and I skip storylines that I could care less. It's like, no. So, yeah. Number 2 is Severance season 2 for me.
Yeah, can't argue with that. I can't argue with that. Yeah, like I said, it just 2 and 3 were very hard for me because I loved Severance so much, and I really loved my second choice, which you figured is Andor. And this is it. It treated the Star Wars universe with political intelligence for me and maturity that I mean, the thing that for Andor that was, it really grounded everything as far as what the rebellion really was about, as far as sacrifice, the fear, the moral compromise. Because, and we had this romanticized notion of Star Wars and A New Hope, and we see all the glory of the rebellion. And yes, there were some darker moments in the original trilogy, but I think the thing about Andor, and maybe and maybe it is too, just my just it tells a timeless story as far as how systems of oppression function, and not just how they're defeated, and it really. And I think it speaks to the times that we've seen in recent history. It speaks to things we've seen in Nazi Germany, and really understands that the empire really was a fascist state, and 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 it doesn't gloss over that. And so it it really and another thing too, it really elevates how ordinary people, instead of these mythic heroes that we got in the original trilogy with Luke, Han, and Leia, and Chewie, and everyone, we really, it was truly like ordinary people making ordinary, making sacrifices and building and really laying the groundwork so that when we do get to A New Hope, it definitely feels more of an earned moment. So, if you're going to do a prequel series, you don't want to just lean in on the nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. And I think Andor, yeah, it had when it did have moments of nostalgia, it used it to for storytelling purposes, not just because, oh, that's a cool Easter egg right there. So, so for me, and in particular, the back-to-back episodes where we do have the Gorman Massacre and then also Welcome to the Rebellion, just 2 powerful hours of television at that still, I mean, just hearing hearing the moments that the people of Gorman's, singing in the square, their national anthem, and of course the massacre that happens there, and then Mon Mothma's speech in the Senate whenever she tells the whole galaxy what's going, what's really happening here, and all the political intrigue and all that kind of stuff. Just Andor just really really just resonates with me to this day, and it's definitely my favorite Star Wars series of as far as what we've seen, in the Disney Plus era, even more so than Mandalorian. But yeah, that is why it was a hard call, but Andor was my second choice for 2025.
All right, I'm not going to do the guessing game, but I am proud of you. More on that later. So this honestly should, again, not be a surprise to anybody what my number one show of this year is. I've only talked about it ever since it came out multiple times. Adolescence. It's a limited series, but I don't care. It counts as a TV show, and that is my number one pick. And this show, and this is where I'm going to say, if you have not watched it, stop, go watch it, come back. You don't want to know anything about it. You really don't. You just want to know the premise, which very much what it was sold on is a child gets accused of murder. That's it. And you're like, oh, that's a basic TV show. So why is everybody talking about it? Well, we're talking about it because you're talking about 4 episodes, hour plus each, I think, or if not just an hour each, and all done in one shot. Every single episode. And then as you're watching the chapters unfold, it becomes more interesting because suddenly the second episode, it's like 2 weeks later. And then you jump more further in time and more. I didn't know that much. I saw one scene, a clip of one scene from my favorite episode 3, the episode I've seen the most times. And I was just enamored with the performances. And I am so glad I did not know anything else. And I'm so glad nobody ruined the fact that they were all done in one shots, one take. Because then when I started it, I still remember first watching the episode and it going. And then at some point, like when they make it to the police station, I think to myself, I'm like, we have not cut. What is happening? And then so to then fast forward to the second episode, I'm like, oh, we're still doing this. Got it. Okay. It's so and then the performances, I mean, you really can't say enough about between Stephen Graham and then the child actor, and this is his first real acting job he's ever done. And they shot episode 3 first. Episode 3, I have again seen the most times. This is a hard show to watch. So after watching this on my own, rewatching, and then watching it with my parents, and then I think maybe rewatching 1 or 2 episodes again, like, I was like, "Nope, I can't do anymore," and I don't need to. It is also I do think it's rewatchable to an extent where I realized so much more about the how deep the writing was upon specifically the second and third viewing than I did about on the first, because that's what happens when you're so hypnotized by the amazing camera work and direction that you're just like, you're not comprehending the full extent of the dialogue that's has all of these little details that get connected in later scenes if you really think about it, and the connections between fathers and sons and also mothers and sons and then daughters too, and just how quickly adolescence can be taken away. Like how quickly one decision is the definitive moment where suddenly you are no longer a child, you are an adult. And also, and then the question is why. And I know that it for by at this point in the year with this show and everyone's discussion about it. I mean, the showrunners themselves have even said this isn't a whodunit. And that's another thing that takes you aback in the first episode. It becomes very clear in that episode, oh, this isn't a we know what happened. But then the question is why? And then even also how? Like how could a 13-year-old kill someone else? Another 13-year-old? Like what? I know we talked about the fact that they're pushing for a season 2. Even if a season 2 comes out, I will stand by the show, and I think everyone should watch it. And yeah, I think this is just the very unexpected thing. And typically every year there's a show that's unexpectedly comes out that just blows me away, and that's why a lot of my favorites are lower on the list.
Yeah.
Just because I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but if I think about a show that I've lived with the most in terms of just thinking about, recommending to people, gushing over, and rewatching, it is Adolescence out of all of them. So that is my number one choice. And Will, I am going to say this, that there is a chance you may slight me, but sir, if you do not have Adolescence on your list, I don't know if we can continue the podcast.
Well, the podcast will continue because Adolescence is definitely, without a doubt, my number one show this year. I mean, it for all the reasons that you shared, and I mean, I don't have much more than I could really add to that. I mean, it really is just one, like you said, one of those shows that just stays with you. And and being a parent, I have a young adult college, have a kid at high school right now. And this it and the thing, the things that you have to deal with as a modern parent, and the toxic masculinity that was addressed, and the online radicalization of things. I mean, it was just so, it's just so, again, to my points about what I said about Andor is also true about Adolescence. Very, very topical show that I think also is one of the reasons why it resonates for so many people. I mean, it's just raw storytelling, like you said. I mean, the third episode, whenever the child kid accused of murder is having a session there with with the social worker, counselor, advocate, it was just chilling. I mean, just the back and forth and that steady, just that single shot camera work, and just ratcheting up the tension as I was fearing for her whenever she was in the room with that kid, and just because of we like you said, it wasn't a whodunit. It was very clear about what had happened. Also, the anguish of the father of whenever his son's being interrogated, and just having to whenever the kid's being strip searched, and just
That scene.
Yeah.
That scene, I remember, sorry to cut you off, but I will
Yeah.
have to say because you brought it up.
Yeah.
That scene, I remember when I first watched it and I talked about it on the show, and you were about to head out on a trip, and you asked me, you're like, so should I just watch it like while I'm traveling? And I said no. And it was because of that scene. Because you don't see anything,
Nope.
but it becomes so unsettling and it's so awkward because you're watching a father react to his son being strip searched.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's all on his face. And so his performance in that moment, a lot like suddenly as a viewer, you're just like, oh, I don't even feel comfortable watching him watch this. I want out of this room right now.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't like this.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's the thing about this show. I mean, there's so many. It sparked a lot of conversation. I mean, this is definitely one of the most talked about, if not the most talked about show of the year.
Mhm.
But also what was so powerful about it is, it didn't offer easy answers. I mean, because when I'm sitting there watching it, I'm like, what would I have done in that situation if I was that father? Or what could you do? And even like the investigator, the police, he had a son in this,
Mhm.
and and trying to like learn more about the culture that's going on there, and the dynamics of young masculine, that toxic masculinity that's out there, and it just, again, this was a show that when we look back on 2025, yes, it'll definitely be like number one on many people's list, but it deservedly so, because like I said, it's just this unflinching, emotionally raw storytelling that never, as an audience member, never talked down to us either. I mean, it accepted us as we are and didn't insult our intelligence or anything, but just put it out there, and then just and as we're talking about it tonight, I'm just like, yeah, I mean, it definitely, it definitely was one of those groundbreaking moments that of 4 hours or so of television that you just, whenever you get it, you realize like, oh yeah, this is something special. And this was definitely one of those special shows that only comes around so often. But like you said, it's one of those ones that you just can't recommend enough to people when they're like, "Oh, what should I check out?" Like, oh, adolescence. Be prepared. You know, don't watch it. It's one of those shows that you're gonna it's gonna sit with you for a while. But it's definitely no brainer for me. As soon as I basically, like, whenever I was putting together my list, I was like, okay, we'll both have adolescence as number one. It'll be interesting to see 2 through 5 where we differ.
I was so worried for a moment there that you were gonna put Andor as number 1, just so you could talk about adolescence first.
No, 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 no,
Like,
no,
"How
no,
dare
no way
you?"
in hell. No, no way in hell. No way in hell. I mean, yeah, we would have to end the podcast
Yeah,
for me being dishonest like that. I would
yeah,
never be dishonest that way about the show, because it's like
yeah,
as we both have said, it's an amazing show.
yeah. Okay, well, I guess you wanted to do honorable mentions. I have 2 other lists, but
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple. I have movies. I mean, as far as honorable mentions, I mean, the Bear almost knocked out the studio. That was really where I was like going back and forth on on my list. But I think the studio, it was one of those ones where I think the studio just sort of stuck with me more than the Bear season 4 did this year. I mean, and not that it was a bad season. I mean, I think it definitely recovered from season 3, like you said, but maybe I'm still feeling burned. And also, I think there's something. I think the studio it was just a newness and freshness about
yeah,
it.
I was gonna say, I think you gravitate more to newness and freshness, and I don't think a lot of the episodes hit you as much as they hit me. So, but so that didn't surprise me. That didn't surprise me that you didn't have it on your list. Were there any surprises on my list or what I did not put on my list?
No, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was curious, and I did hint at this, so now I have to follow through with it. Paradise was close, and so my number 6 and number 5, but Paradise, I ain't putting it on my list without The Last of Us season 2, and here's why. Because I find I have the same frustrations with both of those shows.
Yeah.
For me, both of those shows arguably have 2 or more episodes. I think 2 though for me that are just exceptional television of this year. Paradise, it's the pilot and it's the episode that you've already discussed, The Day. And then Last of Us season 2, it is the full flashback episode of the in-between years with Ellie and Joel. And then it's also the episode where Joel dies. And I remember those, and I do know everyone's reaction to that second episode, and you cannot tell me that that wasn't like such a big moment. However, I also fully understand why The Last of Us is not going to be on a lot of people's top 5, top 10 list, because it is a very it's not consistent. And
It's a very choppy season. Yeah.
It's a choppy season and it's a frustrating season.
Yeah.
I also found Paradise to get a bit frustrating. And the finale, Will's passion for about his annoyance with the finale of The Last of Us season 2 is matched by my frustration and annoyance by Paradise's season finale. And it's not because you could not see it coming. I don't care about that shit. It is just the execution was, in my opinion, abysmal. And it just did not work for me. I'm still upset about it because I love that pilot episode so much.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And I am looking forward to season 2. So I will also say Gen V, just because of the one episode, The Kids Are Not All Right, season 2, it could have been, but it's not. So I have a fun list that I want to get into.
All right.
And my fun list, my first of 2 fun lists, is called Disappointments. Now, you would think, well, Sarah, you already talked about some of your disappointing TV shows with Last of Us season 2 and Paradise. No. This is nicknamed Disappointments because I blame those people who are like, oh my God, this show was so shocking and this moment, and the influencers, the TikTokers. I blame you all for this shit because you told me to watch this and you told me what I should expect. And I watched it and I don't know what the fuck you were talking about. I am pissed. So at number 3, we have All Her Fault. Okay. Now, part of me did watch this also because Sarah Snook. Okay. Succession. Come on now. I have to watch it. But yeah, I heard so many little things upon watching this about how, like, oh my God, that ending, what a twist, and all this stuff. Now, did I predict the ending? No, but I got very bored in this season. I completely skipped the penultimate episode. I didn't care to learn about Carrie's backstory. I glanced over a few scenes and I was like, okay, so they get into a car accident, okay. And then I jumped straight to the finale and they explain everything. And yeah, first of all, the typecasting, if you really think about the actor who plays the husband, yeah, we all could have seen this coming. Also, it was bad melodrama, but we're going to jump on to number 2 that Will should not be surprised about because he knows my anger about this show because I went in depth with you about this. The show is called We Were Liars Season 1. Y'all lied to me, and the fact that y'all cried upon watching what happened the summer before in this show. No. Those kids had it coming. I'm sorry. There was a stupid plan. It made no sense, and I have no sympathy. I have no sympathy. And I also don't have sympathy because of how they ended the entire season, which is basically, we want to make even more money on y'all, so we're going to kind of have a season. No, 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 no. This doesn't need a second season. Will I watch a second season? I really will, just because I'm curious about the stupidity that could occur and continue. Like, why does the boy cousin have to still be haunting his mother? Why? Let the dead rest, okay? They burn themselves alive in a stupid plan. Spoiler alert, whatever. Okay, now this last one, if I think about it, my whole betrayal of accusing the influencers of talking me in his shows, it kind of stops with this last one because I've I did this to myself a long time ago when I started a little show called The Summer I Turned Pretty. The Summer I Turned Pretty season 3 is so frustrating and boring that I have to talk about it. I don't want to because I don't want to give this show any more attention, but I do think that this show is the perfect example of what I call how you destroy a love triangle concept. And it's called character assassination. The character assassination of Jeremiah. Now, was I ever on team Jeremiah? No, 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 no. But how is it that by the end of season 3, I'm like, I don't even want Belly to be with Conrad. I don't. I don't. I honestly, I thought all of her decision making so selfish, so stupid. She doesn't deserve Conrad, okay? So it's a complete character assassination of not only Jeremiah, but also of Belly, who, and then poor Conrad is supposedly so in love with her that he can't see that she's so stupid. And also, I'm sorry, I know that in the books they say she doesn't sleep with both brothers, but clearly in the TV show she did, and I don't know how either one of them can get over that. I don't see that in real life ever occurring and being that way. So yeah, I skipped through so much of the last 2 episodes. It's hilarious, but that was the worst of the worst for me on my disappointing list. So there you have it.
Cool. Cool. Well, I did not do a disappointing list. I stuck to, as far as my wild card, it wasn't so much a wild card. It was, going back to best of movies and TV. I just, I decided to, because I mean, if I did have to put a disappointing show for the year, I think it's safe to say it was, other than the 2 episodes that you noted as far as The Last of Us, I would have to say The Last of Us season 2 was my disappointing show for the year. But other than that, overall, there was nothing that really like offended me as far as like, or basically, I guess, nothing would have like, I wouldn't have stuck with something if I just didn't feel it. Oh, I guess the other, I guess I will say, I guess the other, maybe another thing that was maybe a little disappointing was Star Trek: Strange New Worlds season 3. A lot of potential, but so I guess I do have some disappointments in 2025. So yeah, so The Last of Us season 2 and Star Trek: Strange New Worlds season 3. They had some good moments, but overall, I don't know if it was the writer's strike or or are they just written by AI, or I don't know, I won't besmirch them like that, but it was just very, very uninspired. They had some good concepts, but I found myself more frustrated throughout the season. There were some high points, but there were more like, all right, y'all, there were some that was just kind of like, this is just not working for me. But my other like, well, things I did have as far as just movies for the year, and really, of course, I think my third, as far as I ended up catching quite a few, and there was a couple pleasant surprises like Novocaine that I really liked. But as far as other movies that I liked this year, I guess my fifth favorite was, as far as in the genre space, was it was really hard between kind of a tie between Mission Impossible 8 and and Fantastic Four. To be completely honest, they kind of both hit there. I know it's a tie, and I know it's an easy way out, but they were kind of both equally like that for me. Next was a pleasant surprise, K-pop Demon Hunters. I really really liked that movie. It was very fun. Just really just unapologetically fun. It was just a fun, just just a good palate cleanser. Just a fun movie just to watch. The soundtrack, I still have it going on my Spotify as far as Golden, and so it is what it is. Next up, one I didn't think that I was going to like at all, but really pleasant surprise, Thunderbolts. You know how I felt. Anybody who's listened to the podcast, Sarah, of our conversations about it. I was really not feeling this movie, but came out of it just really, really impressed. Just the characters. They focused on the flawed, the characters of the MCU, but really just had great emotional stakes. Really, had a good discussion on mental illness and just depression and those types of things. And so I was really really impressed by Thunderbolts, especially given how Marvel has really been hit or miss here lately, especially like earlier this year with Captain America 4. Let's talk about disappointments. Next up, Sinners. Love Sinners. It was my second favorite film of the year, and just really just really just mostly original story, very the music, the atmosphere, the film, the cinematography, everything about it, the performances by Michael B. Jordan and the rest of the cast. I mean, it just was just an amazing film, and I'm really hopeful that it'll get its appropriate flowers in award season. And then, of course, last, my favorite film of this year was Superman. I mean, it's how Superman 78 sort of just kicked off the superhero genre film. I don't want to. I mean, I don't want to be too much prisoner of the moment, but I will say that it definitely reclaimed Superman as a hero, as far as simple hope and moral clarity, even with its flaws. I mean, when you think about how I know the Snyderverse folks will probably torch me for this, but I mean, I did enjoy Henry Cavill's portrayal of the character, but the overall darkness and the whole God complex. I mean, Superman is essentially God, and Zack Snyder really dove into that with the whole with the very Christian religious imagery and that kind of stuff. Which I don't have a problem with that, but I think what I liked about James Gunn and David Corenswet is it just made Superman relatable again, and it showed us about why this character still matters. So those are my 5 top movies for this year.
Okay, cool. I don't have a top 5 movies of this year. You just mentioned a lot of the movies I've seen this year, though.
Yeah.
I feel like when you watch maybe 5 movies a year, like your top 5 isn't really your top 5.
I know. I watched about 10 or 15. I had about.
Oh, I know you had
Yes.
more than I did.
Yeah.
So instead, on a more positive note, I have a list of my favorite. Now I'm gonna preface this: high school TV shows. And I call high school because the criteria I used was at least a character has to be going to high school. Okay, there should be scenes within a school of some sort. Now, I will also say, and in future years, if I were to redo this list, it would also include the college setting. Okay, now and so it is in a particular order, but number 5 is Kitty XO season 2 on Netflix. Okay, this show is just a delightful little show. It's a spinoff of To All the Boys I Loved movie series, previously a book series. And they're just nailing it. Season 2 is far better than season 1. And that is because Kitty and Minnow, their chemistry, great. The direction we're going, great. Am I scared for season 3? Yes, I am very scared because when things go well, that is when inevitably the writers are like, oh, we're going to make up some lame constructs so people can't be together who like, it's like, no, you had it right. But then again, I understand you need drama. So I'm fearful that we're headed into a certain direction with a lot of these shows tend to fall into these traps. Which brings me to number 4, and I have talked about this show. I've talked about, I think, all of these shows at some point this year. I've mentioned these. Motorheads, season 1. To my knowledge, this show is not returning for season 2, and I think that's bullocks because this show was a surprise for me. I did not think I was going to like it as much as I did. I went very in-depth post-show with Will about what happens in the finale because I could not get over it. I'm still traumatized by that, and now you're telling me I'm not going to get any follow-up? They also have a corresponding, well-written family mystery from the past going on that sometimes works, but or more often than not does not work in these types of show. And that kept me entertained with all of the school kid age, high school kid age melodrama happening simultaneously. So I hope somehow maybe Netflix picks it up, but I think this show needs a season 2. The kid actors are really good. The screen chemistry is good. And I think it had so much potential going into a second season that I hope it finds a way. And I say that because the next show I'm going to bring up is School Spirits, which was originally on Netflix. I did not watch it. Then earlier this year, randomly on a random like Saturday or Sunday, I suddenly put on School Spirits and I just start watching it. Become obsessed with it. I watch season 1 and then I'm like, there's no season 2. And then I find out, well, Netflix canceled it, got picked up on Amazon. Amazon is just so happening to be airing season 2. So then I jump on a season 2. And I'm so glad it got greenlit for season 3, and we're getting a season 3 next year. This show, it's very much like this girl dies and she finds herself in limbo in her high school, and she meets all these other ghosts, and they're haunting the high school. But they go into places, and there's this one episode in season 1 in particular where they talk about grief very poignantly. And I think that's when this show really excels, is when it digs deep into that aspect of the stuff. And then there is a great romance happening from a few different angles, and life and death when you're talking about a lack of fulfillment. Like the show is centered around people who died at such a young age that like, well, what does that mean? Like, I had all this potential. Like, I can't finish what I started. So I think this show, again, another surprise. I'm so glad I randomly stumbled upon it, and I'm so glad I'm getting a 3rd season. Hopefully with that 3rd season, it ends up potentially in my top 5 of the year. And that brings me to another thing that I never saw coming, and I've talked about this show. Spirit Fingers. This is a K-drama. Yeah. I will say why it's number 2 is because upon rewatch, and I have rewatched this show, I tend to skip through a certain storyline. The main storyline I watch all the way through. I have rewatched episodes. I have watched certain compilations because I think the main chemistry between the 2 main actors is just so well done. And I also love all of the family stuff and the confidence building happening with the main female lead. I think that's why the show works so well for me, is because there's a balance between the A plot and the B plot. And so I had to put it on my list. The last show I'm going to say, and my number 1, because this one, we've talked about it while we were going through our top 5 list. It's about the shows that stick with you. Ginny and Georgia season 3. Now, I watched Ginny and Georgia season 1 and season 2. I think I got on the train with season 2, if I'm not mistaken. But season 3, it's just like, okay, all right, this show is running on all cylinders. There is an episode where Ginny gets pregnant and has an abortion. That episode still sticks with me because I can't believe they went there, and I'm so proud they did because of how they handled it, especially because Georgia, she is also had Ginny as a teenager. So the choices and the discussions and the heartbreak and between a mother and daughter and life repeating and then a different choice being made in the end, it was such a fascinating episode of television that I just wish more people would watch the show just to get to that episode. And that, and then everything that happens with Max. Max is my MVP of this season because she very subtly was able to break away from just being Ginny's best friend to having her own storyline in the sense of that's very poignant for young, specifically females, about wanting to be a friend, but finding yourself like, I don't want to make this about me, but nobody's paying attention to me. It's a high tightrope. And then the fact that there's all these subtle nuances of OCD behavior with her, the show tackles in a very subtle way mental health. There's an eating disorder going on with the character, physical abuse. So all of these very high, very intense subject matters are buried into the show about centered around this single mom named Georgia. So I had to put this as number 1. And if arguably this could be in my top 5 if it had more episodes like that. But yeah, so I wanted to make sure, like, in a way, this is my honorable mentions. In a way, this is my honorable mentions list. So I'm just going to put that all out there. So,
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
I don't have any other top lists other than this. Maybe if we wanted to do a quick look ahead to 2026 before we wrap up here.
That is fine. I am very much talked out. So yeah. I am looking forward to Paradise Season 2. I'm looking forward to One Piece is probably on the top of my list. Lanterns will be fun. I'm looking forward to the Real Housewives of Rhode Island. I'm looking for all to the Real Housewives franchises that are coming out next year, but specifically Rhode Island because it's going to be New York meets New Jersey. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah. I think in a way, as we've discussed for the last like hour and a half, 2025 was a great year of television. The standouts really stood out.
Yeah.
And I think that 2026 is going to be good and strong, but they got some strong movies coming out next year. So who knows?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think for me, as far as TV shows for 2026, very fascinated with A Night of the Seven Kingdoms because it's the next spinoff from Game of Thrones, and of course we'll be here before we know it, January. But looking forward to that. Of course, we'll have also, of course, House of the Dragon season 3. Definitely looking forward to that. As you mentioned, Paradise season 2. I was just watching the trailer before we started tonight, and looking forward to One Piece, of course, and also Lanterns, and the big one, which is coming to an end, The Boys season 5. And then as far as movies, yeah, you're right. I mean, we finally got the Supergirl trailer this past week. It looks very, I liked what I saw there. And then of course,
I always, sorry to cut you off, but Supergirl, I did watch the trailer. I watched the trailer the way the trailer is supposed to be watched. And it's with Kind of Funny. And I say that because Greg Miller is the knower of all things Cal. And I did have to stop their reaction because he was going to get into spoilers. And I'm like, I think I'm going to watch the rest of this in 2026 because he has read and he's very knowledgeable about the source material. So I have to plug it. If you're gonna watch anyone's reaction, you got to watch Kind of Funny's reaction on that trailer and
Yeah,
anything to do with Superman because he's obsessed.
yeah. Oh, I know you've mentioned a kind of funny. Greg Miller definitely is definitely obsessed with Superman. But yeah, I like the trailer. I know about I saw a lot of lazy takes out there saying it reminded him of Guardians of the Galaxy. That's the laziest fucking take ever. But but I thought that for the vibe that they are and the aesthetic that they're trying to do with the DCU and make it expanding the world and understanding who Kara is as far as a character. I I really I really liked it, and I am going to go read Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, the source comic book material. It's a blind spot on my comic book reads, so I'm going to fill that gap. And then of course we got the Avengers Doomsday, and there's the whole trailer leak that happened today. If I did watch it, I'm not gonna I'm gonna take I'm going to not spoil it for folks who want to be surprised. But the trailer is going to be a part of the upcoming Avatar movie that's going to be released, I believe, this Friday. And then I think, from what I understand, they're going to release three other little teasers each week leading up to. I guess there's a doomsday countdown clock to count down to this film coming out, next December. So yeah, and then also, to set things up, Avengers Endgame is also going to be re-released in September of next year as well. So that's those are some of the things I was looking forward to as far as 2026.
Well, it's been a fun year, Will, and I appreciate everyone who has been with us and anyone who has found us this year and has navigated all of these TV shows with us and these dramas. If you haven't listened to our reaction to Superman, you should, specifically because of the story I tell. Okay, talk about okay, it's a great story. It is majority of the podcast, but it is a great story and it does tie into Superman. Okay? Definitely does. It is not a tangent. It is a story that had to be told and it was. Okay?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great story, and but yeah, it's been a fun year. I mean, this has been, as we went through some periods there with writer strikes and COVID and actor strikes and everything in between, where content kind of slowed down, but things are picking up again. And guess we've been doing this. I guess we've been potting together since January 2017. So we're coming up on a decade, and I've loved every single minute of it. And I hope everyone's enjoyed our weekly recaps and thoughts and tangents on things. But hey, I couldn't imagine doing it with anybody else.
And if I will admit, if it needed to, if I should have watched it this year and it should have.
Yeah, yeah. The only reason why I didn't put Stranger Things was for me was like incomplete, so I can't like.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's why I did the asterisk. That counts as a 26 show. Okay, yeah, 26 show. Same thing with Fallout.
yeah.
So on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, so you can find me at Will M Polk, WILLMPOLK, on all the socials.
And you can find me there too at SJ Belmont, SJBLMOT. Please follow our crew on X, formerly known as Twitter at Scene and Nerd, on Blue Sky. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Threads at scene_n_nerd. And visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.